Let's get right into it. Number 7. The government's spy birds. There's a moment in everyone's life when you look at a pigeon and think, I don't trust you. Maybe it's the blank stare. Maybe it's the fact that it walks like it's late for a meeting it forgot to schedule. But for decades, some people believed something a little wilder, that government agencies were building robot birds to spy on citizens. And here's the plot twist. This wasn't entirely fiction. Back in the Cold War, your tax dollars, well, someone's tax dollars, were hard at work funding a CIA project called Project Aerial Reconnaissance, where real birds were trained to carry tiny cameras, microphones, and sensors. Yes, pigeons with paparazzi gear strapped to their chests. It sounds like a rejected Pixar movie, but it was real. The logic was simple. No one suspects a bird. Because why would you? It poops on statues, eats old fries, and looks confused 90% of the time. The CIA literally trained pigeons to fly above enemy sites and snap pictures mid-air. And here's the kicker. They were good at it. Birds make excellent spies. They're quiet, unbothered by human drama, and impossible to interrogate because they speak fluent coo. You'd think the discovery of actual surveillance birds would make modern conspiracy theorists happy, but ironically, it only made them louder. Because once one conspiracy turns out to be true, the human brain starts thinking everything is true. Suddenly, every seagull is a federal employee, and every crow is a narc. Psychology calls this pattern recognition overload. Your brain starts connecting dots so hard it creates constellations out of crumbs. You become the type of person who sees a sparrow on a power line and whispers, he knows. But the genuine irony here? Real spy birds existed, but nobody cared when they finally admitted it, because by then everyone had moved on to lizard people. Basically, the CIA invented bird drones, and the world shrugged. Number 6. MK Ultra. Actually happened. Picture this. You're sipping your morning coffee, vibing, minding your business, and then someone casually tells you, hey, did you know the government once secretly drugged people to see if they could control minds? And you laugh, because obviously that sounds like the plot of a discount sci-fi movie. Except surprise, it wasn't fiction. It was MK Ultra, and it was real. Very real. During the 1950s and 60s, intelligence agencies were obsessed with the idea of mind control. Not just persuasion, not hypnosis, but full-on, turn someone into a programmable puppet levels of control. Your brain, meanwhile, can barely remember why you walked into the kitchen 5 minutes ago. But MK Ultra researchers decided LSD was the magical key to unlocking mind domination. So they gave it to people, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes less voluntarily. Imagine being a regular scientist trying to do serious experiments, and your coworker is like, bro, what if we just gave everyone acid? And leadership said, yeah, that sounds responsible. Your brain under LSD is basically a confused art student melting into a beanbag chair, not exactly the ideal tool for creating super spies. But that didn't stop the project from going full throttle. The psychology behind it is pretty dark. Fear makes institutions try ridiculous things. When people feel threatened, they abandon logic, ethics, and occasionally sobriety. MK Ultra proved that even powerful governments can panic so hard they start acting like conspiracy theorists themselves. Spoiler, none of it worked. Turns out, free will is much harder to destroy than they hoped, and LSD mostly made people sit in corners contemplating the universe or crying about the color blue. The funniest part? MK Ultra became public because someone accidentally leaked files. Imagine running a massive secret program and losing the receipts because someone filed something wrong. Bureaucracy, the true hero of history. The entire thing collapsed under its own weirdness, and now it sits in the conspiracy theories that were actually true Hall of Fame. Number 5. Operation Northwoods. Imagine your government deciding to fake an attack on its own citizens to justify starting a war. Sounds like the kind of thing your conspiracy-obsessed cousin rants about at family gatherings, right? You know, the same cousin who thinks the moon landing was filmed in a Walmart stockroom. But back in the early 1960s, military officials actually drafted a plan like this, and it wasn't a joke, satire, or internet fan fiction. Operation Northwoods was a proposal suggesting that the U.S. stage fake terrorist events, yes, fake like hijackings, explosions, and even manufactured casualties, all to blame a foreign nation and spark public support for war. You'd think someone in the room would have raised their hand and said, hey, maybe mass deception and pretend tragedy is morally questionable. But nope, the plan made it all the way to the president's desk before being shut down. Here's the psychological twist. Humans love narratives, especially dramatic ones, and governments made up of those same humans also fall into storytelling traps. If the story is compelling enough, even smart people start believing it's necessary. The logic becomes, if we trick people into supporting this war, eventually they'll thank us. Spoiler, they would not have thanked them. The fact that Operation Northwoods got as far as it did proves that extreme ideas don't always come from shadowy figures in basements. They sometimes come from well-lit offices with polished wooden tables. And that's why conspiracy culture explodes whenever this stuff surfaces. Because once you discover officials once suggested, let's fake some disasters, your brain starts wondering what else they thought about during lunch breaks. Basically, humans can justify anything if it fits the story in their heads. Operation Northwoods is proof that the world doesn't need conspiracies to be wild. The truth is often unhinged enough. Number 4. Operation Midnight Climax. If someone told you the government once ran secret mind control experiments inside brothels, you'd probably assume they'd watched one too many late-night conspiracy documentaries. But nope, this was an actual program with an actual budget and actual agents who thought this was a normal thing to do on a weekday. Operation Midnight Climax was a branch of MK Ultra, but with even more chaos. Intelligence agents quite literally set up safe houses disguised as brothels in San Francisco and New York. Then they hired sex workers to lure men inside, where the men were secretly drugged with LSD through drinks, cigarettes, or whatever creative method the agents could come up with. Behind a one-way mirror, government operatives watched everything like morally confused raccoons who'd accidentally discovered HBO. And here's the disturbing part. The goal wasn't morality, ethics, or even meaningful science. The goal was curiosity. They wanted to see if drugs could make people confess secrets, react predictably, or behave in ways useful to intelligence work. Essentially, it was, what if we combine espionage, illegal drugs, and zero oversight, which, shockingly, did not result in groundbreaking breakthroughs unless you count new definitions of the word unethical. The psychology behind this fiasco is wild. People in authority can fall into what's called diffusion of responsibility, where they convince themselves that as long as a project is for national security, anything goes. Your brain loves to justify actions when someone higher up says, "This is important." Mix that with Cold War paranoia, and suddenly you've got federal LSD voyeurism. Operation Midnight Climax ran for years before anyone said, hey, maybe this is insane. But by then, it was too late. The files leaked, the truth surfaced, and the conspiracy theorists, they feasted. Because for once, the government wasn't just doing something shady, they were doing something so bizarre that even Hollywood would have rejected the script for being unrealistic. Number 3. The poisoned cigarette experiments. Picture a world where a random person claims the government is secretly testing chemicals on smokers, and everyone around them laughs because it sounds like classic paranoia. Except something eerily close to that happened in the mid-20th century. And the weirdest part is, hardly anybody talks about it. During the Cold War, researchers under various military and intelligence programs tested biological agents by releasing them into the air, onto unsuspecting populations, and yes, onto cigarettes. Not in a big tobacco is up to something way. In a the government wants to study how fast a biological agent spreads through a common habit, test subjects smoked what they thought were normal cigarettes, while scientists tracked transmission patterns, symptom development, and environmental spread. It sounds like a conspiracy theorist's fever dream, but multiple declassified documents show experiments where ordinary citizens had no idea they were basically participating in an involuntary science fair. The justification? National security, of course. Because apparently nothing says, protect the country, like turning everyday habits into covert biology experiments. Psychology makes this even stranger. Humans trust routines. You trust your morning coffee, your shower, your cigarettes okay. Maybe not trust, but you at least expect them not to contain experimental pathogens. That trust is exactly what researchers exploited. The more normal the object, the better the test environment. When the truth came out, people reacted with a mix of horror and, I knew it. And honestly, who can blame them? Nothing validates conspiracy culture quite like discovering the government once tested biological agents using something as casual as a smoke break. Basically, reality said, your paranoia isn't wrong. It's just outdated. Number 2. The secret weather manipulation program. Imagine telling your friend, dude, the government is controlling the weather, and watching them smile politely while mentally backing away from you. Because obviously, that sounds like nonsense. Clouds aren't listening. Storms don't take instructions. Rain doesn't check its inbox. Except, for decades, weather manipulation wasn't just a theory, it was an actual military project. Welcome to Operation Popeye, a classified U.S. program during the Vietnam War where scientists used cloud seeding to increase rainfall and turn enemy supply routes into giant mud pits. They literally tried to weaponize the sky. Planes flew over target areas, sprayed chemicals like silver iodide, and watched the clouds dump weeks' worth of rain in hours. Imagine being a soldier and finding out your biggest enemy isn't the opposing army, it's weather with an agenda. And here's where psychology gets spicy. Humans love thinking we're powerless against nature. It's comforting to believe storms are random, not scheduled. So when cloud seeding got exposed, people freaked out, not just because it worked, but because it shattered the idea that weather is untouchable. Suddenly, conspiracy theorists who'd been yelling, they're controlling the climate, didn't seem as unhinged as everyone thought. Cloud seeding is still used today for things like drought relief and snowfall control, though now it's mostly public. But Operation Popeye? That was the moment the world realized controlling the weather wasn't a fantasy, it was a line governments had already crossed decades earlier. Number 1. Project Sunshine. Imagine saying, the government is stealing dead bodies for secret research, and watching everyone around you roll their eyes into another dimension. Because that sounds like something straight out of a horror movie, or the nightmares of someone who falls asleep listening to conspiracy podcasts. Except here's the uncomfortable truth. Project Sunshine was exactly that. During the 1950s, the government ran a top-secret research program collecting human tissue, especially from deceased infants, to study the effects of nuclear fallout. They didn't ask families. They didn't get permission. They just took samples, thousands of them. The goal wasn't evil. They wanted to understand how radioactive particles spread through the human body. But the methods? Absolutely unethical. The conspiracy started when someone claimed the government was stealing body parts. Officials denied it, laughed it off, and called it ridiculous. Classic response. But when declassified documents emerged years later, they showed the conspiracy was not only true, it was worse than people imagined. Entire countries were participating, gathering samples from multiple continents. Families were never told. Scientists quietly filed reports while pretending everything was normal. Psychologically, this exposes a harsh truth. When people believe the greater good is at stake, they can rationalize almost anything. Ethics become optional. Transparency becomes inconvenient. And conspiracy theorists, for once, become the only ones asking the right questions. Project Sunshine didn't become famous because of what it discovered. It became famous because of what it proved. Sometimes the wild theories aren't wild at all. They're just reality wearing a trench coat and hoping nobody notices. Humans love believing the world is predictable, rational, and sane. But history says otherwise. The world is weird. Institutions are messy. And sometimes the conspiracies everyone mocks are the ones hiding the truth.